Good afternoon, everybody. We are back. It is Friday and it's 1 o'clock, which means it is time for our weekly webinar in our Level Up series. So a big welcome to everybody. For those who don't know me or are new to our webinar series, I am Lisa, founder of Fabric Academy, and we have been running a series of webinars over the last 6 weeks to bring our community as much knowledge, as much experience, as many tips and lots of advice from expert speakers on certain topics. And we have had some amazing guests over the past 5 weeks, and today is set to be amazing too. So thank you to everybody who is joining us. I'm just giving everybody a couple of minutes to start to filter in, and then I will introduce the lovely Dan. Now, today's topic is one that I'm sure many of you are so interested in, because finding your first role or looking for a job can be such a daunting task. We know that competition is so high in the job market, and it can even be really scary and quite daunting trying to decide what path to go down. And our guest today knows all about this situation and all too well. So we're going to be welcoming Dan Mian just a little while, who is founder of GradVance. He's also marketing manager at BT and comms lead for the Ethnic Diversity Network at BT. After graduating in 2015 and a series of rejections, Dan settled for a sales job that didn't quite fulfill his big career ambitions. He left that role in 2016 and completely transformed his mindset. He spent hours sharpening his CV, his networking skills, and successfully secured interviews and job offers from BT, Vodafone, Sky, Virgin Media, and Amazon. After landing his dream job as marketing manager at BT on a graduate scheme in 2017, Dan then went on to found GradVance in 2019, and he did this based on his personal struggles of the job search. Their mission there is to build better futures by helping students and early career professionals, especially those from underrepresented communities, to secure their dream job, which I'm sure is just what many of you are hoping to hear. So far, they've helped hundreds of people and secured jobs for them at Google, BT, Vodafone, TikTok, and so many more. So as you can imagine, I am so excited to be sharing all of Dan's expertise with you today. We set Fabric up for this very reason, to help ambitious marketers secure their dream jobs and progress in their career. And this piece, this very first step on that journey, is where many of our community are today. So a little bit of housekeeping as always. We are going to be chatting over for the next 30 minutes or so, and then we're going to open the floor to you guys to answer all of your questions. Now, if I can just ask that you pop the questions in the Q&A box as opposed to the chat. Feel free to say hi in the chat, let us know where you're watching from and who you are. But if you can try and keep any questions in the Q&A, that would be wonderful. And I will move to those after we have finished talking. So without further ado, Dan, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks for the great introduction. It's great to be here.
Oh, I'm glad. And with GradVance and a full-time marketing role, you must have a pretty busy schedule. So really appreciate you joining us and sharing all your knowledge today.
I'm excited to be here and to share, hopefully to be able to give back and inspire some people to go out there and get on the job search and get their own jobs and develop their careers.
Brilliant. Well, this topic is so personal to you, isn't it? Because you've been in this position, and I'm sure so many of our community either have been or currently are in this position. So I'm excited for you to share your wisdom with us all today. Before we get started, would you just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your journey and your background before we get started with some questions, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've set it up really well. But sort of, I graduated from Loughborough University in 2015. I studied geography and economics, and I didn't really have an idea or plan for what my career was going to look like. It was just two subjects that I enjoyed at A level. And when it came to graduate and to embark on the job search, I had a bit of a shock to the system, let's say. The realities of actually securing a job that was important to me kicked in, and that's when I started facing a lot of rejections. I thought it'd be quite easy actually to be able to get a job with my degree and just off you go, here's your salary, here's your money, go. But it wasn't the case. So I moved back in with my parents 6 months, and within sort of 6 months time, I did get that first job, as you mentioned, in sales. Looking back, it was probably a job that I probably took for the wrong reasons. It was more out of desperation than it was because it was really giving me what I needed in terms of fulfillment, culture, sort of me feeling like a sense of belonging and feeling like I could progress, within a company. It was more, I need to get started here. I'm scared. I'm desperate. Let's just go. So that was fine, and I was learning some good skills in that job. But it got to a point within about 10 months' time where I had quite a frank discussion with my parents. Like, look, I can't do this much longer. I need to get out of there. And they supported me, and they said, look, Dan, just quit. Quit, and we'll deal with it. So I did, and so here I was a year after graduating with unemployed, back on my parents' sofa, with no job, sort of no real hope or vision for what I wanted. It could have gone two ways, really. I could have felt sorry for myself, and I think I did for a couple of weeks, to be fair. But it went the other way, which is, I need to make this work. I value myself. I know what I can bring to a company. I had that inner self-belief. I always had that self-belief, but your confidence gets knocked when you're in that space and you've been rejected a lot. So, but what I did have was sort of learnings from the rejections, because I knew that it wasn't going right, but I did have some feedback from some of the applications. So I had that. I also had some experience now, and I knew from that job what I didn't want from a career, which actually in hindsight is a lot more important than finding out what you do want, because you go through that process. So like you said, I stripped it back. I changed the approach from quantity to quality, and that was the key difference for me. And we can dig into that a little bit later. That led to me securing different interviews and for my dream companies, and BT was top choice for me. So when I got that call to say you've got the job, it was one of the happiest days of my life, actually. Feels like a long time ago now, but I started in September 2017. I started in supply chain operations, so looking after the EE warehouse, getting all the mobiles out, getting them back through the repair stores, through the retail stores, repairing the phones. So that was very logistics based, and I really enjoyed that role. I then moved into managing a call center, which was the service center for the phones and the engineers, sort of managing a team of 30 people in that call center there. And then I decided to have a little bit of a change from supply chain, and that's when I moved into marketing, because I felt like I wanted that buzz I got from sales. I wasn't quite getting it in the operations space. I was able to use that experience to tell a good story, to be able to get my job in marketing. And that's where I am today. So I'm a marketing manager at BT. It's B2B focused. I look after 4 large businesses within the company. Some pretty cool ones. They're called specialist businesses. So drones is one of them, for example, some of the big street advertising units you see out there. And I'm also comms lead for the Ethnic Diversity Network. So that's something I got involved with around the time of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, when there was upheaval in the world, and I felt like I needed to find people to connect with in that space. And that's when I got introduced to the network. They just so happened to be hiring for committee roles. I applied and I got it, and I really enjoyed my time there as well. So yeah, that's my sort of journey from uni to BT. I founded Gradvance as I was rolling off the graduate scheme, because it happened very organically. It was people were messaging me saying, Dan, I need some help. Like seeing the update on LinkedIn and going, can you help me out? I also had my little brother who was going through university, and some other family members. And I realized that, you know what? I've learned quite a lot in that journey, and it's all helping people get jobs. So let's set up a community. I literally just set up an Instagram page. I set up like a LinkedIn page, and I just wanted to start sharing content. That grew into actually coaching and helping people specifically get into roles. And it's grown now. I think COVID meant that a lot of people stopped traveling and started thinking about their careers. So there's sort of demand for that kind of service came through for me. And now I'm at a stage where I am today, and I'm really proud of what we've achieved.
Your story is so inspiring. It really is. And not only that, you managed to, get into your dream position, because that's tough, right? It's really not that
tough
easy to do. But also that you are now so committed to helping others on that journey, because I kind of like me in a sense that, you learn the hard way. I did exactly the same, learned the hard way, and then realize actually you don't need to go the hard way. You just need somebody to give you the advice and the tips and the knowledge.
100%.
to save you that trauma. And essentially that's exactly what, what we've been trying to do. And I guess what I find really interesting, and I think this is probably quite a useful point, is that you didn't go directly straight into marketing. That often, securing the dream role can sometimes be about securing the dream as a much longer term piece. And also I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that being involved in the operations, the logistic roles probably gave you a really good understanding of the foundations to then go in and market some of those products and services.
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that there's a lot of pressure on people to find this quote unquote dream. I'm going to talk a little bit later about what that actually meant for me, but a dream job isn't like you find that thing, one thing, and that's it, you're committed for life. That's really rare, especially in this day and age, in this environment. The younger people in the generation now, the way the world's moving, like social media jobs didn't exist when I was in school. It's just, it's crazy the way the world moves. So it's more about finding, building on skills and finding different experiences and then learning along the way. It's more like a journey of discovery. So what I found from sales was that I love selling. I love helping grow a business. It's cool working with people and with the clients. Like when I got that sale and a commission, I was like, oh, this feels great. But it was repeating for me. So it was the same thing over and over again. I'd only ever sell that product again and again and again. And that's what I sort of learned, maybe I want something different. What area of business do I want to learn? Let's try operations. So when I went into supply chain, that was a totally different world. I've now got a jacket and a high vis and a hat, and I'm going around like, talking to all these people and managing these teams. And that was like really, really interesting. Learned so much about operationally. How does because it's the backbone of any business. If you're actually serving products, like the supply chain is so important. So knowing that was great. When I moved into the customer service role, I'm now dealing directly with the end user, the customer. So I'm hearing the problems all the time. Like every single day I'm dealing with the problems. I did that for a few months, probably about 7-8 months. And I realized then, okay, I've enjoyed each of these roles, but I've also got a good story to tell, and I've got a unique perspective. So when I went for the marketing interview, I was like, Dan, you've got no experience, so why should we give you this job? And I said, well, take me as someone who, take me against someone who's been in marketing forever. They don't have the perspective of a salesperson. They don't have the perspective of an operations person. They don't know what the customer issues are. And for me, identifying those pain points and being able to sell effectively through marketing comms is where I can fill the gap and where I bring a unique perspective. And the head of marketing, who I'm still really good friends with today, she was like, you know what? I've never thought of it like that, but it's such a great perspective. So I told the story in that way, and that's what led to me getting the job.
Yeah. And that's it's so important, isn't it? And I guess this is where we spend so much time in personas at Fabric, really understanding that customer inside out, back to front, every tiny nuance and, aim and problem and issue just makes you a much better marketer. That knowledge is, it's gold.
100%. And it's the transferable skills are so important, especially if, for example, if a few people on this call are sort of maybe don't have direct industry experience, even if you're in like a retail store or a call center, you're still dealing with customers every day and pains and communicating, and it all feeds into specific roles. It's just the way you sort of nuance that and the way you actually see your own experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys have just launched a website that's packed full of all sorts of amazing resources to help people in their early career and increase employability, essentially. But I guess what resources were helpful to you when you were building out your network and creating your CV, and what helped you? Any go-tos still that are relevant?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the lack of resources was probably one of my main problems when I left university. I think that I was thrown into the real world, quote unquote, and I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know how to write a great CV. I didn't even know that some of my experience that I got at uni was valuable. Lots of different things. So that year after, when I changed my strategy and mindset was trying to make the most of my resource. I think being resourceful is so important when you're trying to build a career. And what that means is it can mean something as simple as asking your parents if they know anybody that you can chat to in an industry. And I did that. I was like, do you know anyone in this industry, that industry? We had a connection through my uncle who worked at this place. Previously before that, I had one of my cousins was working at RBS, so she got me some experience there, like to do a few weeks. So it was using my network immediately here that way, but then also amplifying that on LinkedIn and digitally using your network, right? So those are the two things that really were helpful to me. I actually just bought loads of books. I bought books on like how to write a CV. What I was trying to apply for sort of management consulting at the time. So I bought a book about management consulting. I bought a book about what leaders are looking for. And I use all this, and I tried, sites around how do you write a great CV and stuff. And to be honest, a lot of them did fall flat, but I did find a couple of gems that at the time helped me a lot. I also then sent my CV out to different people. I said, do you have any advice and feedback? And the beauty of LinkedIn today is that you can do this type of networking, and you can really help your job search. So yeah, I think becoming smarter with how I use my network and resources was really helpful during that time.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I often talk about the number one employability skill, and of course there isn't just one, but resourcefulness is so high on our list at both of my businesses, because if you are able to go out there and find the answers to questions some way, somehow, sometimes it's as simple as you said as asking a question to somebody, sometimes it's a much bigger task of just digging and persevering, but that particular skill set is so valuable to you in your role, but also to the business that you're in, to have that, because when you're faced with a customer problem, a marketing problem, but any type of problem, your answer isn't just, I don't know what to do here. It's somebody who will go out and figure it out.
100%. It's problem solving. It's like you got a problem. How do I fix it? What can I do? Who can I talk to? And it's then being brave enough to act on that. It's all well and good having these ideas, but if you're brave enough to actually go out there, and that's when you can really take control of your career, and it's quite an exciting time to do that, especially now. But yeah, my website that I've just launched, I've literally created resources that I wish I had, back at uni, or even just starting out in my career. So there's like a full CV template on there, a cover letter that I wrote, the exact cover letter I used for BT, interview prep guide, like LinkedIn templates, I'm just like thinking, what do I need? What did I need? And I've just put them all on there. So if anyone's interested, just pop along and have a look. You can download them for free.
Absolutely. No, that's brilliant. You spoke a little bit before about when you approached the grad market the second time round, you focused on quality over quantity. How did you go about doing that? How did you know which roles to go for, like which were the quality ones and not just that scattergun approach?
Well, I try to think about why I did that for a start. And when I was looking at the jobs, I was I was applying based on the salary and the company name. That was pretty much it. I was looking at all the big four and top tech companies, the top consultants, and I'll just click and apply, and I'm just sending applications off thinking, I'll get there, I got a good degree and whatever. That didn't work out for me. I also lent on my dad for advice, which wasn't the best advice, because his generation, it's just a different world. So the advice he was giving me was, you need to apply for 10 a week, 15 a week. It's a numbers game. So I was doing that. And even when I said to him, look, I'm going to change how this goes, that did not work for me. I'm going to focus in on 10 to 15 applications and just give it a go. If I put 100% into these applications and it doesn't work out, okay, it didn't work out, it is what it is. But at least give myself the chance and the shot of doing that. So that, for me, I was rock solid in my mindset that was going to happen, despite what my dad was saying. So yeah, I did that. I mean, in terms of how I found, or in terms of the switch in strategy, the scattergun approach didn't work. So I was I needed to become much more targeted. So almost like a sniper, right? If you change the analogy. So instead of just applying for anything and everything, any industry, any role, any company, I was like, well, where do I want to be and why? I didn't even know what industries were, to be honest, when I come out of uni. I was just applying for stuff. So I then decided to narrow it down to industries and specific companies. So I changed the approach. I went from bottom up, which is going on Indeed and LinkedIn and just clicking apply, to top down. I went industry, then company, then role. And I was researching industries. And I remember sitting on my parents' sofa, and I was watching the football while I had my laptop here. And I looked down at the TV box, and the TV box was Sky Plus. And I was like, Sky? They do football. That's pretty, maybe they employ people. And I didn't even know this at the time. And then I went on the Sky, and I saw, oh, this is pretty cool. They've got some cool grad schemes. What's this industry? And then I realized it was telco. Then I found tech. And I was like, this is like a nice combination of media and communications versus technology, which when I actually thought about it, I was really interested in. Like I loved all that kind of stuff, you know, tech stuff, but also communicating with people. And it just felt like right. So that's when I focused in on those telecommunications and tech companies. And that drove a lot of my application success because it meant that I was researching way more effectively. I was networking with the right people. I was understanding a lot of nuances that I didn't even think of doing. And I think that's what drove me to becoming successful that time around.
Yeah, and I think that's such an interesting story. And actually, there is real focus there, isn't there? You know, it's not rocket science, but there is real focus there in terms of that top-down approach. So I think that will be really, really valuable for people who are probably in a similar position, just trying to figure out, right, how do I streamline this? How do I narrow the pool?
Yeah.
I've got a bit of a,
And
laser focus.
if people are in that position, I'd really make it quite simple. Pick 3 industries, and it could be based on growth, as in the industry's growing. Like that's always a good place to start. But it could also be just based on what you enjoy. So like if you like fitness or food, those are industries. You know, health and fitness is a full industry. Food and drink they're massive industries. So once you get like 3 of those, you can then research companies within those industries. So find like 5 companies. Maybe it's a mix between like the large corporates and versus like some of the middle ones. And you can build them out. Now you've got 15 companies that you can go to their websites, go to LinkedIn, find the people, and it drives a lot of your efforts. So now you're finding and creating finding the right opportunities matched to what you want. I think then the research really comes into it, which I think we'll probably get to later. But that's just a little strategy that people can use.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. That's great. I mean, you are very clearly ambitious, Dan, and very resourceful, as we've just touched on there. But how important are personal values when it comes to looking for a role that really starts to kind of fulfill those big ambitions?
So important, really, really important. I mean, especially when you're looking for the right companies, because if you work in a company that isn't aligned to your personal values, it just won't work. It might work for a short time, but it won't work long term. And it has a knock-on effect because if you don't feel a value alignment and a sense of belonging in the company, that's going to have an impact on your work ethic. It's going to have an impact on your networking abilities. It's going to have an impact on what you achieve. So in terms of your earning potential, it could really sort of plateau that as well. So you want to be in a place where you feel excited, you feel like a sense of belonging, you feel valued, and you know that the company's values match to yours. That's where the research comes in. So if you go to a company website, right, they have mission and value statements generally. I didn't think much of them at the start when I first started looking for a job, but now it's all I focus on, whether I'm looking for a new company. Go to their about section and find out what they talk about. You need to know your own first. So for me, for example, I come from like a mixed heritage background. My mom's white and my dad's from Pakistan. He came here when he was younger. So I've been brought up in that sort of world. You know, I've got tan skin. So for me, it's important that my employer recognizes people who look like me, right? And people and D&I. So if that isn't clearly embedded throughout the company and they don't talk about it and they don't have the right leadership in place and all these things, for me, that's a no-go. Like straight away, it doesn't align to my values because I won't feel like I belong there. Other thing, there's a lot of different things you can look at, CSR, whether the company is actually helping communities and it's sustainable, the leadership, what they talk about, lots of different stuff you can look into. So I think that's really important. I think it's really important to focus in on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really good advice because, you don't want to be reading a mission statement or a purpose or a set of values because it's been a marketing exercise that the company has put out there. And I think it's much easier to spot that now from the really authentic kind of purpose, mission-driven businesses where you can see it in their people, you can see it in what they're living and breathing, you can see it in the output of their, not even necessarily their work, but just what their involvement is and how they talk about themselves and different topics and have opinions on things. So yeah, I think that is, really, really important advice.
A lot of companies, not a lot of companies, but some companies might be doing this type of value mission, marketing and branding on their websites, but not embody it within the company. So how do you differentiate, and how do you spot that? And this is where research really comes into play, because let's just say there's like a gender imbalance in the company, for example, but they talk about gender equality. That's all well and good, them talking about gender equality. I understand that, fine, great. But what are they actually doing? What actions are they taking to improve gender equality in their company? What does their leadership team look like? You can then research that and look at the facts. What charities do they support? Do they run sessions and webinars for women? Are they supporting certain charities? Check out their social media pages and talk about them. Then go and talk to the employees and find out what was it like being a woman in this company. There's so many things you can do, and what that does is it validates for you whether it's right for you. But two, when you get to an interview and they ask you why you want to work here, you use that research and that evidence to show a true connection to the company, and that's the difference between getting the job and not.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is so important, isn't it? Not just when they say, why do you want to work here, you reel off the homepage content on their website. Why do you really care? Like, why are you so aligned, and why would you be a good fit for them as much as they would be a good fit for you? So yeah, that's great. So I guess just getting down to real practical stuff now. I mean, CVs are still such a big tool, aren't they, when people are looking to secure that role? And a question that I get asked loads is, how do people, one, put together a good CV, but two, most importantly, how do they showcase their personality through a written document? And how do they get that to stand out in, what could be multiple written documents of just different people on the table?
Yes, big question. We could spend a long time talking about CVs. If I could nail it down to 2 or 3 points, let's just talk about formatting first. So I see a lot of creative CVs, let's say, especially when you're looking at marketing jobs, right? You get the creative CVs coming through, which are super colorful and like use loads of graphs and tables and all this kind of stuff. And maybe they've used Canva to find a nice design, and it all looks great, but the content just lacks quality. And this is where and it also becomes a little bit distracting when you're using a graph or like a 5 out of 5 star communication symbol to show how good you are. One, if I'm the hiring manager, how do I know what that even means? What's it being compared to? The graph is not going to tell me anything. So instead of showing those skills in like creative ways, I would much rather you show them within an experience that shows an impact or a result. Creative CVs definitely have their place, but I think standard black and white, just always have a master standard black and white document and then adapt it to the company. I think that some practical stuff like 2 pages, no more than that. 1 if you can, especially if you're a graduate, because you won't have that much experience to start with. I think then personal details and that kind of stuff to keep that off. You don't want to be using things like your address and your date of birth. I would probably stay away from using your image as well. Like, these are things that have the potential to cause biases, and you don't want that. You want to give yourself the best opportunity you can. So from there, I think once you've got the formatting pretty clean and it's structured and it uses bullet points, now we're talking about the content of the CV itself. So quality is always a thing we're looking for, and to show impact, you need to be able to show some quantifiable results. So that's the key difference between a good CV and a great CV, is showing the impact you made through numbers, right? People always ask me, like, how do you even do that? And it's a difficult thing to do, but every single job, every single role that you've ever done has quantifiable results. And it's not just about sales, although sales is a clearly defined quantifiable result. It can also be about, let's take marketing, right? Campaigns you've ran, impressions you've generated, right? All this engagement type of numbers. But also think like just in a customer service role, it can be things like number of calls you take per day or number of resolutions you make per day, the speed at which you do that. Maybe you've improved a process, which has meant you've streamlined something and improved the efficiency, problem solving, stakeholders you manage, lots of different things you can quantify. So quantifiable results is important. The next thing is then like the skills. You have to be showing the skills that are relevant to the role, because there's no point you showing like a technical skill that has no place in that specific role. And that's where the tailoring comes in. So it's a good combination of the two, I think, that will help you show your impact. I think I'd start there. In terms of personality, always have an interest section. Definitely, like interest and achievements, like 100% show that. You know, for me, I talk about all the stuff I'm interested in, the D&I. Like I talk about playing college basketball and captaining the team and going to like this national cup. I talk about playing football and reaching this final that we did. I talk about when I went traveling in around South America and I went to Machu Picchu. And at every single interview I've had, that those things are talked about straight away. Like the interviewer said, I mean, remember having an interview with was it BT? I think it might have been the BT one actually, but it was one of the companies, and they said to me, oh wow, you went to South America, you know, when was this? And she said, yeah, I absolutely love it there. I went to Machu Picchu, and we talked about that for 10 minutes. Even my first job that I got after uni, I had on there something about cricket. The first 10 minutes of the interview was spent talking about cricket and like the sports you play and stuff. And that, what it does is it builds a personal connection between you and the interviewer. You find common ground, but it also helps you relax, because if you have that conversation, you're now just talking to another person who's interested in what you do. So it really helps settle the nerves. So 100% have an interest section in the CV and bring out your personality.
Yeah, and I think that those two combinations are so important. The stats type of thing, you know, highlight those stats, brilliant advice. I think the interest section for me as well also shows so many of the softer skills that employers are looking for. So, you know, going traveling around the world shows confidence and risk taking, you know, going, you know, playing part of a team shows, you know, teamwork and ambition and drive to win. And there's so many of those skills that you don't even realize that employers are looking for in the softer skills, as opposed to the experience bank that come through within those interest pieces. So, you know, I'm always slightly disappointed when I see an interest section with like 3 bullets of yoga, reading, and
reading. Yeah, I see it all the time.
You know,
reading, I like reading books. I'm like,
yeah,
okay,
tell me
yeah.
something, tell me something that's going to show me something about you. So yeah, I love a good interest section. I always think that's how you really stand out from, you know, from other people.
100%, yeah.
So I mean, you must be some sort of master interviewer, right? I mean, is there a secret to it? Are you just particularly good at it, or can anybody be really strong in interview?
I mean, there is a secret, but it's probably not a secret. Like, honestly, the best way to be good in interviews is to be confident, and the best way to be confident is to prepare.
Yeah.
And for me, it starts before the application goes in. Like, you know, that research we were talking about, right? You could spend, and I genuinely did spend hours researching these companies and these industries before. So when it came to even the first screening or like the second video interview, I was saying stuff that was authentic because I'd done the research and I knew why. So that for me is the first thing. If anyone interviews for Fabric, you're going to know, if you ask them like, why do you want to work here, whether they really care about the company or not. Yeah. You know, it's quite obvious, isn't it? Especially when I see it all the time when I'm interviewing for BT. First question we ask is like, what motivates you to join BT? And the people that go, well, it's an international global company with 100,000 employees. You know, we sells broadband and Wi-Fi, which connects people. And yeah, I just love the fact that it's international. Okay, cool. You literally spent 5 minutes on a website. Maybe you Googled BT. You know what I mean? It's a difference between saying that and saying, well, I spoke to Dan in BT and he talked about how you guys ran this amazing initiative in the D&I space. And as someone from an ethnic minority background, that was really inspiring to me. I also researched this amazing client project you did with Coca-Cola and how it was like a brilliant collaboration. The testimonial was amazing. And then I saw this webinar where the CEO spoke about X, Y, and Z. And that for me was like amazing. Oh, you know what I mean? That's a very different conversation. And it's like, okay, this person does want to work here. So that's the first thing, is like, you need to show how you're motivated for the company. But then the second thing is, how are you going to show the right skills and influence the interviewer properly? Yeah. So I said preparation creates confidence. And what people don't do a lot of is job description analysis. And for me, it makes no sense, because the job description is like a cheat sheet for an interview. That section where it's got the desired skills or skills needed is like the thing you need to prepare. You take that and you go, right, I need an example or some examples to specifically hit those points. And it might be, let's take marketing, right? You're going to have to be a great communicator. You're going to have to be good at presenting and influencing people. You might have to be good at, well, stakeholder management, right? Organize, lots of different soft skills we need to be a good marketer. Then show me some examples of when you're showing these things, and build them out in a method called the STAR method. So situation, task, action, result, for those who don't know. It's a nice format that keeps your answers concise. And the R of that STAR is the quantifiable result that everyone misses. And it's like, okay, what does that even mean? So if you're talking about a campaign, you set it up and you'd say, I was working with X person in the digital team to run a campaign, right? So that's the situation. The task was, we needed to attract X amount of customers to buy this, right? You've set it up nicely. Then the actions, if the question's about communication, you maybe want to focus on some of the things you did in terms of communication for that role. So I then reached out to X agency and we briefed clearly the response. They came back with a result with some creative concepts. I then had to present that to our teams within the business and manage the stakeholders, go back with feedback, and you literally list out the steps, right? And you show where you've shown that communication. The results of this were, and this is the bit everyone misses, it drove 100% more customers to the brand than we realized. We got excellent stakeholder feedback, and now we're entering for an award. That's the bit that people miss generally.
No, that's amazing and really important, because I think, again, and sometimes I guess for those who might be struggling to, measure that impact or show that result, it doesn't always need to be a stat or an output as such, does it? It could simply be, in that particular instance, the agency understood the project really well and they delivered exactly what we needed in the first round, and the project hit its objectives. If you haven't got a result, still tie that up.
The result should be something that shows an improvement, and it doesn't have to be a number every single time. Like, it depends on the question as well. It's about managing stakeholders. You're probably not going to talk about numbers. You're going to talk more about emotions and whether you were able to get what you needed from that person.
Yeah.
So, or maybe if it's like a problem in your team that you maybe had to overcome and why you did that. The result was, well, both people were happy in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect example. So, okay, so amazing advice there, really useful in terms of practical stuff. But we know that leaving university can be quite conflicting in terms of the time in your lifestyle and when you're going to, where you're going to go from here. And you also have the huge pressure of that you're competing with lots of different people who have completed the same degree and also looking for similar type of jobs. And it can be quite crushing, can't it, when you don't walk into that first role or that dream role or something that you're really passionate about doing. Any tips for people who are looking to find that first role, how to prepare themselves for more the emotional side?
Yeah, do you mean when you've got the role or generally in the job search?
No, when you're on the job search, just
Okay.
How to prepare for the fact that, you might not necessarily walk into a role first off, and how to, I guess, prepare for rejection.
You know what? That's the one thing we didn't prepare for, was getting rejected. Because when you're in the school system, the education system, it's very structured. You've got your exams, you've got your coursework, you know exactly what you want to do. Generally, you're performing well at every stage. You're not really going through that much like turmoil or struggle. And it's all of a sudden, it's like, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. And it's funny because even when you get into a job, you're starting at the bottom of the pile, whereas in uni, you were at the top of the pile, right? You graduated and everything's like amazing. And then, oh God, I'm getting rejected all of a sudden. Why? Why is this happening? So learn to see rejection as an opportunity, like a learning opportunity, as opposed to seeing it as evidence of your incompetence, because it isn't, because you are valuable. You can add a lot to whoever this company is. So you need to keep believing that. And some of the times, it's not personal as well, rejection, a lot of the time. It might just be a timing issue, or maybe you didn't position yourself correctly with your CV. And I would see it as an opportunity. So if you do get rejected, try and get feedback from them, push them for feedback and follow up with them. Don't end the relationship on a bad note either. That there's opportunities that might come up within that team later down the line. So if you've done well and you've got to an interview and it doesn't quite go your way, say, look, I really appreciate the opportunity. Look, I take your feedback on board. I'd love to stay in touch for any roles you might have in the future. I wish you all the best. And keeping in touch with that person, it might just so happen there's a role that comes up later on that might be good for you, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're getting to an interview, you've done really well. You're in top 1% of job seekers. So I'd say that see it as an opportunity to learn from people, as opposed to I'm not quite good enough. And then I suppose when you're trying to find a job, if you're getting rejected, it depends on what stage you're getting rejected, but if you're getting rejected at the first hurdle, you're doing something wrong. So it's something needs to change. So your CV isn't good enough. Maybe a cover letter isn't quite hitting the mark. But I'd say just change your approach a little bit. So if you're just sending applications online, you're one of many. Switch it up, go to LinkedIn and try and warm that application up. So if you find a company that you like the look of, instead of just hitting apply straight away, go to the company, find the people and link in with some of the people in those positions, managers, or maybe even some lower people, to get some insight. And you might have a 15-minute informational interview with someone in that company. And all of a sudden they really like you and you really like them, and you click. And it's like, you can use their name, you can use that insight. They might even give you a referral, because this has happened plenty of times to people I work with. You get recommendations. So when it's like, I've spoken to Lisa in Fabric in the first instant, in the first, so say me and you have had a chat, right? I make an application. The person on the other end of that application sees Dan, but Lisa's already told that person receiving the application that there's this guy who reached out to me. He seems pretty cool. I think he's going to apply for this job. And then boom, that drops in. And it's like, you've already warmed it up.
Yeah, completely.
And it's almost like marketing, isn't it? It's like you can't have a great product without actually branding it and marketing it correctly. People need to see it and know who you are. Yeah. So just keep making those sort of chips, I suppose, in the and warm up the job search.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, actually, because that actually happened to me in the early years of my career when I was in marketing, and I was poached by a dream company. The biggest company that I wanted to work for in the region came to me and offered me a role, and I was so tempted because I really wanted to work for this company, but I knew the role was completely wrong. It wasn't something I was looking to do at all. It was a step backwards. It was a client that I wasn't really interested in. But I took the interview anyway, and I spent a lot of time with them, and I turned the role down, and I gave them really specific reasons as to why I turned the role down, and that I, would love to work for them in the future. And if this type of role comes up, do reach back out. And about 6 months later, they did actually reach back out, and I ended up taking that role, and it was a much better role for me than having moved into something for the wrong. So that
amazing.
Those conversations, those opportunities, those points where you can connect with somebody, they're not wasted, even if you don't get that role first time round.
100%.
Or there's always something, as you say, in that connection, isn't there? So
and it's like it pays dividends for you in like years to come, in ways you just don't even know. I mean, it's just it's so important, because I see an interview now as it's a conversation and it's a relationship with someone who you might not have known before. So that's great, because it's like, I'm building a relationship with this person. Even if I get rejected, I'm going to stay in touch with them, and I've learned some things. Also, see it as like, good experience, because I tell you now, there is not one person, and if they are, fair play, but there's not one person who's made one application and got the job. No chance, because you're learning at every single point. So just keep tweaking, keep learning, keep thinking. If you've got an interview, the fact that you've even done that experience is amazing, because now you know how it feels. You'll feel less nervous going into it. You'll feel more confident. And it might be the second or third or fifth, but eventually it will happen.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to finish with one last question, because it's super important, and then I'm going to move to our audience's questions. So the big question, and this is, I guess, not the quickest of answers, but so important. It can obviously feel like a vicious circle, can't it, when you need experience to get a job, or when you need the job to get the experience. And I mean, this is something that I talk loads on, because I'm so passionate about the fact that experience isn't everything, and actually for me is always secondary to the personal skills and the softer skills. How can graduates showcase their experience when they haven't really got any? And what's the best way for them to bring that through onto a CV?
So how can they showcase experience when they haven't got it?
Yes. So if a role is asking for a year of experience and they haven't got that year of experience, but they're really kind of committed to, they could do that role, they want to be at that company, they've done all the things that you've talked about before, and they will have some level of experience. It might just not necessarily be in a role, a prior role.
Yeah, sure. So it's unless you've done like a placement or an internship, you won't have direct industry experience, and that's okay. That's fine, because you need to focus on the things that you've done and the things that you've got. So throw yourself into as much as you can. Genuinely volunteer, do your societies, like try things at uni, project work, because you can turn that project and experience in university into actual experience.
Yeah.
And even doing part-time jobs or like retail-based roles, stuff that isn't industry-based, is like really valuable. I mean, I'll give you an example of someone I worked with last year. So Alex, he's on the Vodafone Discovery Business Graduate Scheme now. But and this is how he came to Dan. I don't have any experience. I've just worked in a bar for a couple of years, right? And I was like, what do you mean just worked in a bar? Like, let's change that for a start. Because when you say just, whatever you say follows it is undermined. So worked on it with him, and I was like, let's talk about that experience. Turns out that he was actually covering for his supervisor, seeing 500 customers a night, upselling at every possible chance. And when you actually quantified that upsell, if it's like a £2 shot or drink or whatever that he managed to upsell, does that 50 times a night, there's a lot of money that's been made for the business.
Yeah.
Working in teams, right, being really organized. And it was just from that experience that he was able to showcase his skills, leadership potential to Vodafone Business Graduate Scheme. So it's like the experience is there, you've got it already. So throw yourself into things and then start to show like the softer skills associated with that.
Yeah.
I think then in terms of creating your own experience, something that everyone can do is just start something, start a blog, a side hustle, like get on Instagram, create an account. If you have a particular passion, you want to try doing something in terms of like entrepreneurship, 100%. I love seeing all that stuff. That's amazing, because to me that shows someone who's driven, enthusiastic, is proactive, creative, so many things. And so many people come to me and say like, I don't have any experience. I'm like, well, talk to me about this, like, what's this beauty thing you've done? It's not even on their CV.
Yeah.
Turns out they've been selling a beauty brand offline, or doing drop shipping, or any sort of e-commerce stuff. And I'm like, this is all really good experience, guys. Like, you should really be leveraging that. And even things like growing a TikTok account, like the older, like people who are in these corporate companies don't know how to do this stuff.
Yeah.
So this is your chance to shine, like your USP, and you can link that into the company. We're like, look, if I want a social media job, I'm on TikTok, I've grown this Instagram account, I've created this content, I can come in and help you with yours. And it's like, you're super valuable now as a Gen Z,
Yeah, absolutely. And you've almost just answered one of our questions from our community, who have said here that he's got a degree in industrial economics, and however he's looking to get a grad job in the marketing sector. Any tips for applications when they don't have any experience in marketing? But I mean, I think you virtually just answered that there. Anything that you would expand upon? Or
great degree. I mean, I did economics as well with geography at uni. I think that I would focus first on what you've done in university, because some of the modules that you've taken, some of the projects, the group work that you've done will have links into business, which can become marketing, right? Especially with economics, things like aggregate demand, aggregate supply, things that you've like learned in that is going to be valuable for you in the business world. So it's thinking about group work and projects, then think about outcomes of those group works and projects. Because if you've maybe worked in a team of 5 to create or to run like a economic research report into a specific industry, that can be used to show different tasks that you did, research, maybe you pulled together a presentation, maybe you delegated. That can then be used to show that you presented to 50 people and you achieved a first-class degree, first-class grade for it, as an example, right? So that's the one place I'd start. I'd also say, as I said before, about all your sort of part-time work and university, extracurricular activities, sports, all of this becomes really valuable, especially for a marketing role.
Definitely. And I guess my little bit of advice on there, because I hire marketers regularly, is, be looking for free courses, like continue
Yeah,
learn. Like don't just finish your degree and then be doing nothing whilst you're looking for that role. Any type of free study, HubSpot is amazing for that, as most of you will know, but loads and loads of courses on specialist subjects if you've got a real passion around, a niche in marketing. The Fabric site has loads of free courses on there in terms of personas and value definition. Just keep learning, because I love to see marketers who come to me to say, this is where this ended and this is what I've been doing in the meantime. But on top of that, I've been doing this and this and this and this, because you've got to commit to continuous learning in marketing, right? It's never, ever, it's
100%.
so fast changing. There's
It
got to
is.
be that commitment and that thirst for continuous education. So I'm always looking for that particular point. I'm less bothered about what the course they're doing or what they're studying. It's more the drive to go out and look for them and then actually completing that piece. So
Yeah, absolutely. The Google Digital Garage is a good one as well.
yeah.
Fundamental to digital marketing. It's a really compelling course. And a lot of them are certified by different companies. So that's great advice. Yeah, do that for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so I have got a question here from Devi, which says, I'm starting my new graduate role next week. What tips would you provide to help a new grad stand out?
Congrats, Debbie, on your role. Good question. And something that I'm doing more on now is helping the early careers people, because I found that although we've helped people like transition into roles, now there's a challenge of like your first few years of your career, which is what I've been focusing on recently. So first of all, take the pressure off yourself, because a lot of new people who come into the world of work think I need to deliver X, Y, Z within like 6 months. So, but take it easy, take your time to really learn first, ask questions and be curious. If you don't know things, just ask, because a lot of the time you'll find it triggers other people to go like, okay, I didn't know either. And as a fresh grad with like a different perspective, you might just be seeing something that doesn't quite feel right, but no one else has seen it because they're so immersed in this way of working. So 100% be curious and ask questions. Spend the first few months just learning about everything about the business, set up conversations with different stakeholders, different people, and just get curious with things. I think from that point, the sort of 4 to 6 month mark is when you can start taking a little bit more ownership of projects.
Yeah.
And I think I'd recommend is document everything you do, document your projects, document your success, document your learnings, and do as much as you can of that. Because when it comes to like end of year performance reviews, or maybe you're looking for another job, instead of like doing what I did in my first year of BT, which is like thinking, oh my God, I got an end of year review next week. What have I done? And then I went scrambling through all my emails and looking at all these projects. Now I've got like a document that just everything is in. Get organized with that first, because that's going to really help you determine what skills have I learned, what have I achieved, and then how can I show that to my manager to help me with progression.
That's such good advice. I mean, honestly, that's my probably favorite bit, because I've also fallen guilty to that so many times where I suddenly had to, refresh a CV or go for an interview for something, an opportunity, and thought, oh my God, what have I been doing for
Well, yeah.
5 years?
So some people leave it off for like 2 years of stuff,
Yeah.
like, oh God, and they've done like amazing things, but now you got to go scramble back.
Yeah,
through.
completely. And I guess that's a really good point, actually, just that your CV is a live document forever and ever, isn't it? Like I have 2 businesses now, so I'd like to hope that my plan is not to go back into employment, but that doesn't need to say I'm not going to be interviewed ever again. Of course I am. So that CV should evolve with you all the way through your career, shouldn't it? It shouldn't be something
100%, yeah. CV and LinkedIn profiles. LinkedIn's way more live than a CV is, but like both of those things should be priority for you guys to keep building and improving your personal brand.
We've got a question here on personal statements. Do they have a place on a CV? Any thoughts around that?
Personal statement. What would you mean by that? So personal, there's personal summary. So maybe it's like the intro line on the top of your CV. It's optional. I think that yes, it's good because you can tailor it to specific companies and roles. I would not have it any more than like 3-4 lines. Make it really concise. Make it a couple of adjectives about you and what you're passionate about. Summarize your education and experience. Maybe throw an achievement in there, and then you can make that last line. I'm looking for X role in X company where innovation and collaboration are at the heart of the business. This is where you've done a bit of research just to tailor it slightly. I think that's what he means by personal statement.
Yeah, absolutely. Question here, which you might or might not be able to answer, but I could help if not. Any tips for international students looking for graduate roles, as very few firms are willing to sponsor their work visas?
Yes. So I think that, so first of all, you want to identify some companies that are willing to, generally the larger companies are. So there's a website, I can't remember, I don't have the link for it now, but if you Google it, right, international companies that sponsor visas in the UK, it does come up with a list, like a long list of websites. I think that what you can do from there is do the same things, like focus, target, industry research, CV improvements, and then start networking with people, because that's the best way you're going to find out whether they do sponsor. And I think that, you know, if you actually position yourself correctly and show that you're going to be great for this role, then why wouldn't they? You know, that it happens, it does happen every single day. So you got a master's in marketing, use your experience, show them why you'd be a great marketing person for that company in that role, get those conversations with people in the company and go for it. Because I think, you know, if you prove that you're the best for the job, then it's way more likely for you to get that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that question came from somebody anonymously, but if you drop me a little note after this as well, we've got a great partner organization that we work with who support international students, and you know, they're brilliant. So I'm happy to kind of hook you up with them, because it is sometimes quite tricky navigating that on your own. So drop me a note. Right, last couple of quick questions, because we've still got some flying in here. So from Suzanne here. So thank you for taking the time. They've said to share all of your tips and experience, Dan. Would you say it's important to tailor their CV for each and every job application if they're applying for similar roles? So, you know, content marketing, social media type roles.
Yes, I mean, if you're applying for similar roles, the content should be pretty like it wouldn't change that. It won't change that much, you know, because hopefully you're showing the right skills anyway. So in terms of tailoring it, if you have a personal summary at the top, that's where you can tailor it to the company and the role. But also, if you read the job description and plug the keywords in, it might be very intricate. Like it might just be a sense of them saying, we want someone who works well in teams versus collaboration. Like you might just want to change that word, right? Or we're looking for like driven and enthusiastic people. And you might have confident on your CV. You just plug that word in. That helps slightly, but if you're applying for similar roles, to be honest, I don't think you need to spend hours tailoring every CV you do.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Question here again from an anonymous listener, but they're currently working as a graduate. Would you say it's okay to still apply for grad schemes whilst working?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I did that. Yeah, why not? I think that because you're working, you've got good experience, you are in the world, like you can leverage that, you know. There's no harm in looking for a job while you have a job. Absolutely. And I think that experience is going to help you when it comes to a graduate scheme. I used the 10 months that I had in my first job to get the grad scheme at BT, and it was, you know, it was that really helped me. So yeah, absolutely. I don't see why you wouldn't do that.
Okay, amazing. There's a couple of questions that I still haven't covered, but they are essentially, I think we've covered them in the talk. If anybody wants to reach out and I haven't got around to your question, please do drop Dan a little note on socials, or me a little note. I'm sure between us, we will absolutely still cover those questions for you, but we're about to run out of a little bit of time today. So I'm just going to say huge thank you, Dan. I mean, you know, that advice is so, I mean, it's just so easy to understand from you in terms of, you know, trying to navigate what is quite a scary time, isn't it? And can be quite
100%.
difficult. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on that. And yeah, if anyone does have any questions or wants to ask me any questions, just ping me on LinkedIn, connect with me and send me a message, and I'll be happy to answer that for you. But yeah, good luck, everyone.
Yeah, indeed. Well, just a little reminder to everybody that our very last webinar in the series is happening next Friday at 1 p.m. This is going to be with Stephen Kenwright, who is the co-founder at Rise at 7, the digital PR agency that has taken the world by storm over the last year. And he's going to be sharing all his tips and advice on how to catapult your brand with digital PR. So not one to be missed up. You can sign up on the website. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Dan, have a great weekend. Thank you again. And we will see you all next week for the last in the series.
You too, Lisa. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.